Hi, middle schoolers. Mrs. Amr here. I'm just going to walk you through how to use the Desmos calculator that for my students is linked in Google Classroom that you may need from time to time as we do our math from home. So the first thing I want to show you is in this calculator is those basic functions that we normally have, all your numbers, 0 through 9, your decimal point, and your division, multiplication, subtraction, and addition signs. The enter button is going to be this blue button right here, or you can just hit enter on your keyboard. The delete button on the screen, again, the delete button is this guy with a little X here to delete the whole thing. You can also hit delete on your keyboard. These arrows are just for you to move the cursor. So let's say, for example, I type in 9 times 6 and I realize, oops, I didn't want 9, I wanted 8. I can scroll back and I can change my number in there. Okay, and I can enter, or I can hit the enter with the keypad there. Now, if the cursor will move my, these arrows will move the cursor to change one specific number. If I want to clear the whole thing, or let's say I have, a couple of things in there, and I want to clear this whole thing and what's in here, clear all clears everything. What you're currently working on and the whole screen of everything above you. Next is the parentheses down here, and again you also can use your keyboard, the parentheses on the keyboard, which would be Shift 9 and Shift 0 for your parentheses. So for example, if I wanted to use the parentheses to say 3 plus 4, the sum of 3 and 4, and then I'm going to arrow over, or use the arrow on the keyboard, divided by, now notice when I hit divided by, it makes it a fraction because the fraction bar is the same as division, divided by 14. And you'll notice my answer, I'll go back here, my answer is going to be a decimal, but let's say I didn't want the decimal version, I wanted the fraction. So you see this little picture here next to my decimal answer, it is a fraction, I can convert it to a fraction. And the nice thing is that that fraction will automatically be in simplest form. You won't have to worry about making it into simplest form. When it converts it, it always makes it in simplest form. Really nice feature. So to prove that to you here, and to show you my next button, what if I want to type in a fraction? So I know there's been a few of you who have had questions with fractions in it. It was a little hard to figure them out over the phone. So let's say I wanted to add 1/4 plus 1/4. Well, that's the same as 2/4. So if I take 1 and then see this button over here above the enter, delete, and the cursor arrows, this button looks like a fraction. So I have 1 as my numerator, and I can type in 4, and then I can use the cursor to get out of that. And I want to add to that another 1/4, so 1 fraction 4, and I'm going to arrow out of that. If I hit enter, again, it gives me the answer as a decimal. I can convert it to a fraction, and it's already simplifying 2/4, which is the same as 1/2. So really nice thing to have in there. Let's see, so we tackled the fractions. I can type in a fraction. I can convert my answer to a fraction. Now let's look at exponents. There are two exponent buttons on here. You have this a squared, which is specifically for squaring a number, and then a to the b. So if I want, say, 11 squared, I type in the 11, the base, and then hit the square. It puts the square in. My answer is 121. Let's say I want to take 11 to the 4th power. I type in the base of 11 and then hit this a to the b power, and it's going to see how the cursor moved up to an exponent. 11 to the 4th power is 14,641. A couple other features this calculator has that may come in handy throughout your time here. You have absolute value, how far away a number is from 0. So for example, the absolute value, hit that first, -92. How far is -92 from 0? It's 92. The absolute value of 100 is 100 units away. For my 8th graders and 7th graders, if you're listening, when we do some geometry and volume, the pi button is going to come into play. So we might have to find something where when they say round your answer to the nearest 10th. Well, let's say I had 3 pi was my answer in terms of pi. Now you can see it's multiplying pi, which is this crazy long decimal, 3.14159, and it keeps on going. But I can take 3 times pi and have my answer, and I could round it to the nearest 10th. That would be 9 4/10. And then the last thing I want to show you is this ANS button right here. So let's say I want this answer that I just had, and I want to use it in my next expression. Maybe I want to take 12 times that by 8, and then I want to take away the answer I just had. But I don't want to have to type this in. A lot of digits there. I might mistype one. I might forget one. A bunch of 7s in a row. So I want to subtract that answer. ANS means it took that answer and plugged it in for me, and then I have my answer there. So it's kind of nice that it has it. One thing I want to point out, when you're converting your number to a fraction, it will not convert it to a mixed number. It will keep it a fraction. So if it would have been over 1 whole, it's going to write it as an improper fraction. So what do I mean by that? Well, let's say I take 1 divided by 3, and when I hit divided by, it does a fraction. That's 0.3 repeating. So let's say I take 12 times 8, and then I'm going to subtract that answer I just had, 0.3 repeating. I hit enter. I want to take that answer and make it a fraction, right? It should be 95 and a fraction as a mixed number. It will only convert it into an improper fraction, and that's okay to have your answers like that. The only way I can do it is a decimal or improper fraction. Okay, so that's it for the calculator. So hopefully it gives you a little more ease with using that calculator.